It's been a few months since Metroid Dread was released. I've beaten the game about a dozen times, and once more quite recently with over a month between that and the last playthrough. Not for anything exciting like testing how the game held up after not playing, I just had other things to play, which is partly why this video took a while to get done. Thank you Halo Infinite. But I figured it was high time that I finally covered my dreadfully honest thoughts about the game. No, I'm not going to apologise. Before we go any further, this video will go over heavy spoilers about the gameplay, bosses, mechanics and story. So if you haven't played Dread, which if you watch me you probably have, click away now if you don't want spoilers and go play the game. It's damn good. Also, I'm going to do the usual YouTube shtick of asking you to like and comment on the video. And if you want to see more Metroid videos about lore, thought pieces and discussions, hit the subscribe button. It's free and it really helps me out. But now, let's get into this. Naturally, let's start with the positives, and there are a lot of them. Let's get to arguably the most important thing first. The gameplay of Metroid Dread is stellar. It feels responsive, smooth, and satisfying. It's never felt so good to control Samus in the 2D style of gameplay. The movement is clearly based off of Fusion and Samus Returns, but with certain evolutions, like the melee counter, which can be used while moving. This is such an underrated upgrade to when you had to stand still to counter. Counters aren't mandatory, but they are way more rewarding when you do them, so that's cool. So now I can swing my weapon of mass destruction in style. The overall arsenal that Samus can have is massive and works really well for the game. Some are back to their former glory, and some new things freshen up the formula, like the cross bomb and storm missiles. That last one seems familiar. Extending from that, speed boost puzzles are back, and they're amazing, but the evolution of the grapple beam near enough sold me on this game on its own. Given how in previous entries the grapple beam gets completely outclassed the second you get it, for that to not be the case here, it's so welcomed. There are also some pretty creative uses for the upgrades too, like being able to wall jump with the speed booster and yet still continue, and my personal favourite is how interconnected the grapple beam and spider magnet are. I remember playing through the game, seeing the magnets and thinking, wait, do I need to grapple beam those? And eventually I found out I did. That felt so good. Game design, baby. And in classic Metroid fashion, there are countless ways to get the upgrades through sequence breaking, and they're fairly easy to do and intentionally made to be possible. Want the gravity suit early? Sure. Want the grapple beam early? Go ahead. You're even rewarded for doing so. As you might be aware, Kraid has several unique interactions when you get items earlier than intended. Getting the multiple bombs early grants an instant kill on the second phase, and getting Flash lets you blink into Kraid's mouth to get bonus damage. Kraid is just a punching bag that takes up 5 screens and I wouldn't have it any other way. So how does the world design stack up with the mechanics? Fantastically. The world is so well designed and interwoven with itself that it's worth exploring around to get secrets, and it's satisfying to do so, especially when sequence breaking. Another thing about Dread, and this is where I feel that Dread surpasses Super Metroid in my eyes, hold up. Listen to what I have to say. Dread's level design is consistent and actually gives hints to things. Is there an item here? Yeah, there is. The map gives me an indicator to look around. What about here? Well, there doesn't seem to be any... Oh. Well, that's just not fair. What about in Dread? It makes it clear right off the bat that hidden items will be alluded to in certain areas, but you won't be told exactly where. But that at least makes me think to look in the area, rather than this mess. It also subtly tells you where to go through its level design. See these enemies? Try shooting them. See that shadow? Try bombing there. Hear that? You get the picture. I have been waiting for an official 2D Metroid to do this sort of design, and I'm glad that Dread has taken the AM2R route and finally given me the indication that a thing exists here. I still would have liked an audio cue like in the Prime games though, then that would have been perfect. On the topic of audio, the sound design in this game is amazing while you play. There are so many different types of sounds playing at different times, but you know what they mean. Take the Emmy, you know where they are based on their sounds alone, and then when they're really close there's a deep whirring sound that lets you know that your time has come. But what stuck out to me was just how fleshy the game sounds most of the time. It's gross, but great at the same time. Now, the bosses of this game are a little controversial. Some are stellar, some are... Wait, who are you again? But let's talk about the good. Kraid, the Experiment, and Ravenbeak. These 3 boss fights are incredible and mark as major spikes of challenge in the game. They test everything you've learned up until then, and you could use everything you have to do certain things, like insta-kill the experiment with the Shine Spark. The experiment and Kraid's roars are also cool as fuck and get me so hyped when I hear them. While I'll say Ravenbeak's fight still isn't as good as Proteus Ridley's, the best 2D Metroid boss ever, it's still pretty damn good. Corpius is good, but naturally first boss syndrome hits it hard. The thing that I want to cover isn't really gameplay, but amplifies it instead. Dread has some of the most gorgeous places out of the whole 2D series. Of course it's partly because the graphics are rendered in 3D and have more power behind them, but these environments rival the Prime games, at least these do. But that doesn't mean the others aren't great. They're so mesmerizing and intricately made that it's weird to think certain things are there just as a background. The lighting, background animals, and weather are fantastically well made. Mercury's team knows how to do backgrounds well. They don't cut any corners, as evidenced by them adding little animations like this to Samus for no reason other than they could. Speaking of Samus, her characterization in this game is phenomenal, and is easily the best depiction of the character I've seen since Echoes. While she still hasn't got the design I'd like, it's infinitely better than what came before, and given her Zero Suit is such a small factor of the game, I could ignore it because the rest of her design is so well done. My god, that power suit is just clean as hell. It's tied as my favourite design along with Echoes' Varia suit. I'm glad the high heels are gone, I love the subtleties in her animations, and I love when her expressions give us more insight to her thought process. Dread also has probably my favourite scene in the entire franchise, where she speaks with Quiet Robe.
Iliemai marhuma satari lin ashkar bechek. Samus Aran, feche hadoran. Ninu habar kumane humdosh, devolen ili Metroid dim ishkanuli satama harizbi.
Kino ulu druda. Ana maril sanur pura. Ay marhel kalom.
Ata estor daburis urahama. Ana habar kisadi ilisana. Ana man bala neyata tamus.
That being said, I wish she mourned a little more like she did with the Federation troopers on Aether. I also really like the lore dumps, subtext, and hints in many places. The different tribes or even species of Chozo, Samus' origins, and even the murals of the Chozo and Space Pirates together. What that could mean, I don't really know. I love how the Chozo have a fully developed language that I wish had more words to it so I could actually learn it. The final thing I want to cover here is the challenge. Metroid Dread is ball-bustingly tough at first, but absolutely fair 99% of the time. Once you get the patterns of the enemies down, they're usually pretty easy to defeat, but it's the learning process that makes it fun. Fair, but difficult. But now we get to the not so fun, but definitely important part, where I just point out things that I think Dread could have done better, or things I just straight up didn't enjoy. Let's get the kind of obvious one out of the way first. The music is borderline forgettable. Don't get me wrong, there are a couple of good tracks in there, and I'll get to those in a second. But the vast majority of the soundtrack for Dread is just ambience, which is fine for when you're playing the game, but atrocious for remembering it. A big part of Metroid's legacy is the outstanding music that can be listened to both in and out of the game. Sadly, Dread doesn't live up to that legacy for the most part. There are a couple tracks that slap though. They're going to be the ones I've already played in this video, and here are the others.
Anaman Henki Maradis.
And unfortunately, that's kind of it. I think the thing that's missing for me is there is a huge lack of melodies in the tracks, which Metro previously excelled at. It doesn't make me move with the music, if that makes any sense. In previous games you felt the music, but in Dread, you're just there with this background noise. I know that I said earlier that the controls for this game are amazing, but that didn't come without getting used to them. Getting the muscle memory down is something I still struggle with. It doesn't help that there are 0 ways to customize your controls. None. In an age where customization is near enough the industry standard, it's weird to see this omitted. Sure, you could change controls in the Switch menu where you could have presets, but that's not very ergonomic. You can't just change something quickly in Dread's menu if something feels off and test it right away. What didn't help with the controls is that for the first hour of the game you barely have any time to practice with the ones you do have. The opening hour of the game is really slow thanks to the cool but abundant cutscenes, not giving you a chance to really learn the controls until way later. Sure, this could help with setting the mood and tension, but pressing pause instead of the map or jumping when I want to shoot gets annoying and important not to mix up when going against the main enemy of the game. The Emmy. These Wally rejects roam special zones in each area of the map and you have to destroy them all. They differ from each other and hide unique upgrades that you can recover. But given they're in the criticism sections, you could tell I'm not the biggest fan of them. They're cool, don't get me wrong, but by the time you get to the third one of these, they're no longer threatening and just become annoyances. It doesn't help that they don't seem that different from each other and that they're limited to their zones. If a whole area was an Emmy zone, bar navigation rooms and save rooms, that'd be way more interesting as you're constantly hunted down. Speaking of those rooms, a couple nitpicks. I don't like that navigation rooms and map rooms also act as save rooms. It feels a little too easy, and there's not much risk when you're saving every 5 seconds. Save rooms are save rooms, come on man. Another thing I have a little problem with is that mashing the shoot button works a bit too well for every situation, and it kinda makes missiles irrelevant. Sure, you don't have to do this, but speedrunners will have to, and it's gotten to the point that turbos have been allowed for this specific action. Missiles are down bad in Dread, not gonna lie. And the last little thing is that Adam would say things I already knew, or even things that were blatantly wrong at times. Sure, this could have been so we don't get too attached and to start making you question things, but it was still a little weird on my first run. Now onto the things I had quite a problem with. This game can be a bit buggy and run a little bad at times. Sure, it's great that it runs at 60 frames per second, but there are a number of points where it dips to the point where your actions are hindered and can even cost you dearly. It's not frequent, but it's enough to mention it. There are also very lethal glitches relating to the speed booster and Shine Spark. It seems that if you stop to charge the Shine Spark while on the stairs and then go into the morph ball, you're just dead. Of course that's not supposed to happen, but the fact that this can be done relatively easily is a bit concerning. This was probably my biggest problem, but I'm having one more thing after this and you'll see why. But the map in this game, it frankly just blows. It's convoluted, collected items are hard to distinguish from ones you haven't collected from first glance, and I feel like this is where there is too much information to the point it all just blurs together. In previous 2D entries you had a grid-based map, and if there was an item in a grid, it'd tell you, but not exactly where. And then once you collected it, you knew because the shape was completely different. Making the icon ever so slightly more transparent doesn't help me at all. It's disorientating, wastes time, and had me checking where I was going every 10 seconds. Of course that could be down to me, but I never had that type of issue with the other games, even in the more complex 3D maps of Prime. The final thing I want to touch on, fittingly, is the end of the game. This is where I'm going to be spoiling the story, so you're warned again. But does the ending kind of feel a bit fanfiction-y, or is it just me? This new villain, Ravenbeak, who we haven't really seen at all in the game, but surprise, he was Adam the whole time, and surprise, he's Samus's 5th dad and was responsible for enabling her to even use the power suit. Wait a second, so you mean to tell me that part of Samus's success was thanks to this arsehole? I find that weakens Samus's character personally. Not significantly, mind you, but enough to make me feel like she was just gifted her abilities rather than worked for them. She still did, but it weakens the effort Samus made to earn her status to me. Another thing about this ending that rubs me the wrong way is just how abrupt it ends. Not only when you beat the bad bird, you basically lose anyway, games please stop doing this, but then when you escape the planet, the game just ends. And that's it. No post-credit scene, no closing moments, just cut to black and the credits roll. Not even any real suspense in whether Samus survived or not. It's since come to light that Dread did have a bit of content cut from the final release to hit the deadline, and that does feel apparent given what seems to be a space for a whole other area in the game, and just how quickly things wrap up. The ending was also super vague at first, and a lot of people still don't know the meaning, but it's just that Samus has absorbed Quiet Rope's Thoha DNA, which allows her to control her Metroid genes a bit better, and goddamn that suit is cool as shit. And that's about it. This review might come off as really negative, or that I think the game's average, but hell no. Metroid Dread is awesome and an incredible revival to the franchise. Metroid's not looked too hot for nearly 10 years, understandably so, but with Samus Returns came hope, and then came Dread. So if I had to give a rating, it's an easy 9 out of 10. The game is amazing and a must-have. Sure, I pointed out a few problems, but the rest of the game easily outweighs any of those problems, and it is absolutely worth the 19-year wait for a sequel to Fusion. Samus is back, and I cannot wait to see what comes next. Well, we kinda already know what's next.